Evening, and welcome to the Prince Hall Think Tank, a monthly conversation amongst Prince Hall Freemasons where we discuss topics relative to craft masonry. My name is Brother Antonio Caffey, and I'm a very proud past master of St. Mark's Lodge number 7, located in Columbus, Ohio, where Worshipful Brother Shaman Stone serves as Worshipful Master. Our lodge was chartered in 1852 by the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Ohio, where currently the Honorable Kelvin J. Davis serves as Most Worshipful Grand Master. Before I let the other brothers introduce themselves, I would like to state that the views and opinions expressed by us tonight in no way reflect the views and opinions of the Grand Lodges and lodges in which we hold membership in. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on our Facebook page or by using the chat option on YouTube. And if we have time at the end of the conversation, as always, we'll try to answer some of those questions. Speaking of YouTube, while you're there, go ahead and click the subscribe button so that you can stay up to date with the Think Tank. At this time, I'll let the other brethren introduce themselves.
Good evening, everybody. This is James Morgan III. I'm a past master of the Corinthian Lodge number 18, operating under the auspices of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia, where the Honorable Philip David is our Grand Master. I'm so happy to be back here on the Prince Hall Think Tank. I hope everybody had a joyous holiday or beginning of the holiday season with your families and loved ones and everything like that. And I'm ready to get this discussion started. Thank you for being with us.
All right, good evening. My name is Brother Dave Gillarm. I'm a past master of Mount Pisgah Lodge number 53, located in the beautiful city of Columbus in the state of Georgia, where I worship master is Cornelius Wilson Jr. I also have the pleasure of serving as the Worshipful Grand Historian for the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Georgia, where the Honorable Bruce A. James serves as our Most Worshipful Grand Master. We definitely thank you for taking time out of your schedule to participate with us and support us tonight. We know you could be doing plenty of things tonight, such as watching the Knicks play the Grizzlies tonight. So we definitely appreciate taking your time, and we hope you enjoy the show.
If you're watching the Prince Hall Think Tank, you're in the right place to be.
Right, exactly. Also, Brother Collins, he's currently traveling back from dropping his daughter off and from the holiday break. So if he gets back in time, he'll be joining us as well. If not, we definitely wish him a safe journey. All right, so tonight's topic is African American Fraternal Orders. Now, while Prince Hall Freemasonry is considered the oldest predominantly Black fraternal order in America, there are countless other fraternal bodies that have had a significant impact not only on the Black experience in this country, but also American history in general. We would have to have a 10 to 12 part series to highlight all of the fraternal orders and bodies that existed. So tonight we're just going to highlight a few. And as always, we urge you to conduct your own research on these fascinating organizations. And as always, if you need some assistance, please contact any of us and we can, definitely point you in the right direction. So let's start out with Brother Morgan.
Oh, man. Well, again, good evening, everybody. This topic I think is very important for those, even if you're not a part of any fraternal organization at all, or if the Prince Hall Masonic family is your one and only organization, or you may belong to a number of other ones. One thing that has happened, particularly social media, don't recognize just how important Black fraternal organizations have been in our history, going back before the 1900s into the 1800s, believe it or not, into the 1700s, as we know in our own Prince Hall Masonic tradition. Unfortunately, a lot of us have the misunderstanding that Prince Hall Freemasonry and the Order Eastern Star, which came a little later, and other opinion bodies. A lot of us today have the misunderstanding that we were the only game in town, which is certainly not the case. So what I want to do is highlight a couple of organizations that were very important to African American communities. And as Brother Caffey just stated, this is not meant to be an in-depth discussion. However, we can get into some Q&A, but also we also want you guys to go out and do your own research on organizations, because many of these organizations no longer exist, but many of them still do. And you may want to find out some more information on them, or you may even say, hey, I'm interested in joining this local lodge or chapter or what have you of this other organization, but you'll never know if you don't know that they exist. So let's get into it. All right, just give me 1 second here. Do you guys see my presentation? You guys see it? Yep. You don't see it now? Okay, very good.
Yep.
All right. So the title of this presentation is Our Other Brothers, and I apologize. I meant to say our other brothers and sisters. So I do apologize about that. All right, let's get it going. Okay, so the first organization that I want to talk about is the Grand United Order of Oddfellows, which was established in the 1840s. Do you guys see the correct view? I apologize. Hello?
You see a black screen right now, brother.
You see a black screen?
Yeah, with Google on the top of it.
With Google on top of it. Okay, hold on. You see the presentation now?
No, sir.
No? Okay.
Yep, I see it now.
Wait, you see it now? Right now? Hello?
Yeah.
All right. I may have to keep it like this because I'm not sure why the Hangouts is acting up. Okay, so I apologize about that. But the first organization I want to talk about is the Grand United Order of Oddfellows, which was established in the 1840s. There are many similarities, I think, in the history of this organization. And one thing that you'll find tonight is the cross pollination of the membership, meaning we had a lot of our early members, and even down to the modern day, who were members of Prince Hall Freemasonry and the Order of Eastern Star and what have you, that were also members of these other organizations. And you'll see a lot of similarities in the historical narratives of these groups. So with the Grand United Order of Oddfellows, they were established in the 1840s. And what ended up happening was you had a group known as the Philomathian Society, or Philomathian Institute, excuse me, in New York City, that was also linked to another organization called the Philadelphia Library Company. And in the 1840s, these groups of black men decided that they wanted to join the Oddfellows. The Oddfellows was an organization that had started in England in the late 1700s, and it was a fraternal organization that became very popular, just as Freemasonry was at that time. Okay, I'm getting some feedback. You guys still aren't seeing the presentation?
No.
No.
Okay,
I see it now.
You see it now?
You might have to just do it slide by slide like that.
Yeah. You can see it right this moment, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Apologize. All right. So what you had happen was that similar to the history of African Lodge 459 in the 1700s, these black men decided they wanted to join the Oddfellows, but they were denied membership. If you study the Oddfellows history, what you will learn is that in England they had the Grand United Order of Oddfellows, and in America over time they had the Independent or the Improved Order of Oddfellows here in the United States. Excuse me. And so what ended up happening was that these black men, some of whom we know were Prince Hall Freemasons, decided that they would approach a man by the name of Peter Ogden, who you see there, who is noted as the founder of the GUOOF. And he was a black man who was a sailor. He had already been made an Oddfellow in Liverpool, England. And when he learned about the situation of these men in America, he decided that he would go to England. He requested for a charter from the Grand United Order of Oddfellows over there in Great Britain, and it was summarily granted, establishing Philomathian Lodge, Lodge number 644, I believe is the correct number, which was established on March the 1st in 1843. Soon thereafter, the Oddfellows grew, again, spreading from New York City to Philadelphia, to Ohio, and all points south and west, especially after the Civil War. One thing I think is interesting about the Oddfellows is that many times, if you read Prince Hall Masonic histories and proceedings in local newspapers, you'll find that over time, Oddfellows in certain places actually outnumbered Masonic lodges and in terms of membership, and I've read in different instances, particularly I believe it was in Texas, in the I want to say 1870s, 1880s. I've read that that the Oddfellows outnumbered them in part because their dues were a little cheaper. And so what you find is people saying, well, hey, look, if I can't get a Gatorade today, I'll go buy a Powerade today, or they're getting a similar service, just a different brand name, so to speak. And so the Oddfellows ritual, the regalia is very similar. Oftentimes, especially non-members, may mistake a photo of an Oddfellow in their family or what have you, and they say, "Oh, my great grandfather was a Mason" or something. And they're similarly styled organizations, but they have their differences. Here we see Charles S. Brooks, who served as the Grand Secretary for the Grand United Order of Oddfellows. He was the author of the official history and manual of the Grand United Order of Oddfellows in America, as you see there. Now, this is a freebie. This is a freebie for everybody. That book is available online for free, free 99. You see how I don't think they hear us. It's free 99. You can just go on Google Books, pick it up, check it out. The entire history is there up to a certain point. And I highly recommend you check it out. And for anyone who is interested in how is it that the Prince Hall think tank, where do we learn all this information and things of that nature? Well, sometimes you got to go to non-Masonic sources to find out about those Masons and Eastern Stars and what have you that were important in our history. Okay, so it's very important that we realize that. The Grand United Order of Oddfellows utilize the principles of friendship, love, and truth. So a lot of times you'll see in the history, if you go look at, I meant to put some graves on here, and I apologize that I didn't, but you'll see the letters FLT on Oddfellow graves a lot of times. Guided by those principles, these lodges spread throughout the country, much the same way that Prince Hall Freemasonry did. The white American Oddfellows did not recognize the Grand United Order of Oddfellows as being legitimate and all this type of stuff. And so we see this theme again, where you have an organization that was started by white people initially. African Americans get a hold of it, we're not recognized, and then they go on their different paths with their different histories. I don't know a ton of Oddfellows. I do know a few who are a part of our Masonic family as well. And so I'm very interested. And if there's anyone in the live chat, please post. I don't know how much recognition plays a part in the Oddfellows history. I've heard some differing accounts. If it's the same way in Masonry as it is with Masonry with visits, but I don't believe that it is at this point. But if I'm off, please somebody correct me in the chat, and we'll definitely look at it in question and answer. Okay. Now, I just want to show this picture. I think it's a really cool picture. I always got to give credit to Brother Caffey because he does a remarkable job on our flyers. And for those of us who are Master Masons, if you look at this picture here on the slide, does it not look, at first glance, does it not look like a picture any Masonic lodge would take? This should show us, even though the rituals may be different, the organizations themselves were different, but they still serve similar purposes, offering insurance benefits and other social benefits, scholarships and what have you, all for the betterment of the community. Okay, so this is something that we should just recognize. And every time I look at this picture, it's kind of eerie because I've seen so many Masonic lodge pictures like that. We have to make sure we also note that the Oddfellows also have their own appendant bodies and their own entirely female focused groups, particularly the Household of Ruth. So I want to make sure we highlight them as well. I wanted to put some photos of actual members of the Household of Ruth, but I couldn't find any old photos, because I tend to put pictures up that are, people who are long since passed. I didn't want to put any pictures up of any women alive today and not have their permission. So I wanted to make sure that we highlight them as well, because we have to make sure we keep the role of women in the front of our minds as well, because the men, we don't just do it by ourselves. We have to make sure we recognize that as well. And speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about a woman who did a whole lot by herself, and for others. This is Annetta M. Lane. A lot of people may not know just who she is, but she was a formerly enslaved woman who lived in Virginia, and she organized an organization called the United Order of Tents. Okay, this group was organized in 1867 by Miss Lane. and another woman by the name of Harriet R. Taylor of Hampton, Virginia. The United Order of Tents is a Christian-based fraternal organization that is predominantly, ran and managed by women down to this very day. This organization still exists, and I encourage you to check them out. I saw a very good little short mini documentary on them on YouTube, so definitely check them out. Their membership spread from Virginia to Georgia to the Carolinas, here to DC, Maryland. I recently found out about New York, and I'm sure that there are other locations that I'm leaving out. So for that, I do apologize. The Order of Tents was incorporated on June 17th, 1883, in Norfolk, and was originally known as the J.R. Giddings and Jolliffe Union, and it began operating as such. The corporation became popularly known by its present name, and so on June 28th, 1912, their incorporation documents were amended, which granted that name change officially. So officially, they became known as the United Order of Tents in 1912. Okay, but prior to that, they were known by their former name. They were licensed as a fraternal benefit society in 1906, and again, as I said, they continue to operate today. This organization I think is very important, kind of very, I don't want to say unique, but I think in some ways they are unique because they offered some very concrete benefits to initially to their members and then to the broader community. The United Order of Tents began to focus on housing problems for low income and no income people of color in their communities, and so they established a 16-bedroom home for adults, which was eventually was named the Rest Haven Home for Adults, and it was operated by their members for their members initially. Over time, it evolved into a home for non-members and non-member families. This practice actually spread with United Order of Tents throughout the country, and over time, it evolved into what we see today. Here is the Annetta M. Lane houses, Annetta M. Lane apartments, which exist today in Norfolk, Virginia, still owned and operated by the United Order of Tents. And so again, we see a very, very concrete benefit that fraternal organization membership offered for low and no income people. I think that one thing that we talk about, in Masonry, we talk about having certain benefits and rights and things of that nature. Well, here's something very concrete that Black women did for themselves and for the broader community as a whole. So, my thought I guess my closing thought as a Master Mason in 2018 is this is a plan, this is a concrete thing that our ancestors did, whether they were Masonically affiliated or not. But this is something concrete that they did. So my question and indeed my challenge is to us, what are we going to do today to continue that and carry on that legacy of our other brothers and sisters? With that, thank you.
Thank you, good brother, for that great presentation. And as I can, looking at the chat on our YouTube page, you definitely sparked a lot of great conversation. Man. So that's a good thing.
Well, thank you. And I want to apologize to everybody for the technical difficulties. I hope everybody was able to see everything. I apologize about that.
No problem. Speaking of technical difficulties, let me try to bring my presentation up.
Right.
You haven't seen anything yet when it comes to technical difficulties when I try to, do stuff. So let me see if I can get it. All right.
Yeah, I see that the chat is going off today. Yeah. And I see somebody.
Right, can you see the presentation first, Brian?
Yes.
All right, we're good to go.
Yep, you good.
All right.
Why does work better than mine? It's because I'm dark skinned.
All right. So tonight I'm given the great pleasure and honor of talking about my other fraternal body that I'm a proud member of, which is the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. All right. For all of you that don't know, I 117 Muir Oda, located in Columbus, Ohio. So one thing that attracted me to Omega, as I talk about it, is its history. Its history of doing grassroots empowerment of the communities and really getting into our communities to work for the service and the uplift of our fellow man. So what I want to do is, we always have that conversation, which I'm going to cover a little bit of it near the end, where I've been in the craft for almost 20 years, and from the day I came in, there's always been that thing with Black Greek letter organizations in the craft. Are they similar? We have some people say that all the Black Greek letter organizations were, all the founders of the Black Greek letter organizations were Freemasons, and there's this tie and this bond. So well, I'm going to talk about that a little bit, as much as I can, because I can't talk about a lot. But we will dive into a few things that some people may not know about Omega Psi Phi. So the general history: on November 17th, 1911, on a Friday evening, 3 Howard University students met in the office of Dr. Ernest Everett Just, who was a professor at Howard University, to form the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity. So, we really, just like the bodies and the fraternal orders that Brother Morgan just got through talking about, the fraternal organizations that Brother Gillarm will talk about, and me presenting about Omega. One thing that we have to really understand, I'm a real big proponent in historical context, and to really understand Omega and all the other Black Greek letter organizations, you have to put it into historical context. With Omega, to really understand it, you have to understand the backgrounds of our founders and the special friendship and the bond that they shared. So we have 4 founders of the fraternity. Dr. Ernest Everett Just. Brother Just was born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1883. He graduated from the Industrial School of the State College in Orangeburg, South Carolina. He obtained his Bachelor's of Arts degree from Dartmouth College and his Doctorate of Philosophy degree from the University of Chicago in 1916. Professor Frank Coleman. Brother Coleman was born in Washington, D.C. in 1890. He graduated from the M Street High School in Washington, D.C., and he eventually obtained his Bachelor of Science degree from Howard University in 1913, his master's degree from the University of Chicago, and he also had advanced training from the University of Pennsylvania. He was a U.S. Army officer during World War I. Dr. Oscar James Cooper. Brother Cooper was born also in Washington, D.C. in 1888. He also graduated from the M Street High School in D.C., and he eventually obtained a Bachelor of Science degree from Howard University in 1913 and a Doctorate of Medicine degree from Howard University in 1917. And lastly, Bishop Edgar Amos Love. Brother Love was born in Harrisonburg, Virginia in 1891, graduated from the Academy of Morgan College. He obtained his Bachelor of Arts degree from Howard University in 1913, Bachelor of Divinity degree from Howard University as well in 1916. He also obtained another Bachelor of Sacred Theology degree from Boston University in 1918. So as I stated earlier, the 3 undergrad founders, so that would be Brother Cooper, Brother Coleman, and Brother Love, were very close friends. While they eventually pursued different professions, they shared many things in common, which drew them actually closer together during their undergrad years, and it really, sparked their friendship. It was said that if you saw one, you definitely saw the other 2, and they even had the nickname of the 3 Musketeers because they were so close. So prior to 1911, there was only one fraternity on the campus of Howard University. As one of our founders, Brother Bishop Edgar Amos Love, stated, we had watched it for 2 years, but it did not represent what we thought a fraternity ought to represent. From there, the 3 undergrads decided to start a new fraternity with the concept of friendship being the core value of the fraternity. They discussed their idea with Dr. Just, who would serve as their faculty advisor, and thus Omega Psi Phi was birthed. So during the first meeting on November 17th, manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift was selected as fraternity's cardinal principles, and friendship is essential to the soul was selected as the fraternity motto, along with the design of the shield and the colors. So again, friendship played a major part and a major role in the formation and the foundation of the fraternity. But from the beginning of the formation of the fraternity, the founders had every intention of creating a national organization. While they were proud of the fact that Omega would be the first fraternity founded on the campus of an HBCU, they did not want to confine its ideas to Howard campus alone. Howard University had other ideas and did not want to see this happen. Founder Love stated in a letter that the dean of their college had asked, "Why don't you just join the fraternity that's already here? We're not responsible at Howard University for its beginning, but this fraternity you project will be spawned on our campus and we will be considered the mother chapter and we will be more or less responsible for what it may become." So Howard was really, while they had a fraternity and a sorority already on campus, they didn't want to start one at Howard because, as I stated, they thought that if anything happened beyond the walls of their control, their college or Howard would be looked at in a negative light. And actually, if you do the research, a lot of HBCUs during this time, especially the Southern HBCUs, had that viewpoint when it came to Black Greek letter organizations. So for months, the university would not even hear the formal request of the founders when they tried to present the idea to them of having a national organization. So seeing the need to expand, several members of the fraternity actually left Howard's campus and traveled to Lincoln University on February 6, 1914 to establish Beta chapter. These members did this knowing that they were risking their own educational standing with Howard. However, they were determined to see Omega grow. Luckily, upon their return to Washington, D.C. and to Howard's campus, nothing actually happened to them. The fraternity was finally incorporated on October 28th, 1914. So when we look at it and really do a close study of the time period, again, we see, as I mentioned before, that negative perception of fraternities on those campuses, and we could probably spend an entire episode on why this perception existed. But as I said before, the main issue was control. So one of the ways that Omega got around that was taking advantage of the Students Army Training Corps program, which was a War Department special training program established in 1918, for college students. So this program was actually the forerunner of the ROTC program that exists on a lot of college campuses right now. And it was actually, as I said, begun in 1918. So what would happen, they would have various college students, predominantly men, come from around the country to various campuses to receive Army officer training, and they'd be, upon completing the program, they would be an officer within the armed services. So, again, during the time period, this program existed primarily on white campuses. And then when, people started complaining and they wanted to have this program on an HBCU, Howard was selected. So when Howard was selected, the brothers of the fraternity saw this as an opportunity to spread Omega's message and grow the fraternity. So, because you had people, again, from all over the country coming, all over various other HBCUs coming to Howard to participate in this program. So the chapter actually produced 27 new members for Omega from 8 colleges, including Johnson C. Smith, Fisk, Morehouse, Shaw, Talladega, Virginia Union, and West Virginia. These brothers would help establish chapters on Southern HBCUs, which have been hesitant to do so. So if you look at a lot of the charter members of some of those colleges that I just named, you'll see a lot of them were actually made Omega Man at Howard during this time period through this program. So just a couple tidbits. So each November, chapters of Omega Psi Phi celebrate Achievement Week. You know, this is where we recognize prominent people in our community for both in the fraternity and outside the fraternity for their contributions to our community. And this week was actually first began after an Omega Man, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who many consider the father of Black History Month, urged the fraternity in 1920 to devote more time and attention to the study and dissemination of facts about African American life and history. Omega Psi Phi and Phi Beta Sigma fraternity were the first two Black Greek-led organizations to actually meet and discuss common interests. This interfraternal meeting actually laid the groundwork for the formation of the National Panhellenic Council, which is a national organization comprised of the 9 Black Greek letter organizations to meet and again discuss common interests, common issues, and form some type of bond. So that formation of the National Panhellenic Council actually started from the meeting between Omega Psi Phi and Phi Beta Sigma. And lastly, as I said earlier, the question is always, when you talk about the founders of these organizations, were any of them Freemasons? And actually, two of our founders were Professor Frank Coleman and Bishop Edgar Amos Love, were both members of Corinthian Lodge in DC, which has one of our esteemed panelists, Brother James Morgan, can count also as a past master of that lodge. So,
that's me.
Right. Brother Coleman and Brother Love were both members of
Brother Caff, if I can interject real quick, I want to correct one thing.
Yes,
Frank Coleman was not a member of Corinthian 18. He was a member of Pythagoras Lodge number 9. If I didn't correct you on that, trust me, my head will be chopped off by the end of the week.
Thank you for that correction, good brother.
No problem.
All right.
No problem.
So let me see if I can get out of the screen sharing now.
And on to that note, Frank Coleman was a member at the same time of Pythagoras 9 as a man named A. Langston Taylor of Phi Beta Sigma was a member of the lodge at the same time. So,
yes, sir. All right. And that's it. Thank you all.
Excellent. Right. Thank you so much.
I guess that means I'm in the shoot next.
Yes, you are.
All right.
But you look like you ready to go to war. You look like you ready to go crusading or something, man. What you doing?
Well, I chose to wear this as the Knight Templars were warriors. The first organization I'm going to talk about, they were warriors as well initially. So this was the closest thing I could probably find to being like a warrior like them. But as Brother Morgan stated, when we start looking at these fraternal organizations, we know some of our older members, they were all, not only were they Masons, they were Oddfellows, Knights of Pythias, they remember the Elks. They remember several different organizations. I believe the first Grand Worthy Matron of the state of Georgia, she was a member of 7 different organizations at the same time, and she was the head of all of them. But one thing that these fraternal organizations were doing, they were offering burial benefits. Our people they wanted to ensure that they had a nice burial. The way to do that was to become a member of these organizations. So you'll see one member that may be even part of 6, 7, 10 different organizations. And they also had a network. I was reading one story about this organization called the Knights of Wise Men, who I'm going to touch on later, and how they had a member who was too sick to plow his fields. So the other members of Knights of Wise Men came in, plowed his fields for him until he can get better. So that way his family could still eat. So these type of organizations had some type of network. And I'm going to go ahead and get into my presentation. And you all can see this fine?
Yep.
All right. I titled this, thank you for that. The Forgotten Orders, because we have so many organizations. If you ask about fraternal orders in the African American community, and you ask about some of the old ones, they're going to always say the Oddfellows. That's what's on our flyer. You're going to hear about the Elks. You're going to hear about a lot of these groups, but this first group that I'm going to talk about is the International Order of 12 Knights and Daughters of Tabor. This was founded by Reverend Moses Dixon, who was also a Prince Hall Mason. And not only additional was he a Prince Hall Mason, he served as Grand Master of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Missouri. But Reverend Moses Dixon was born on April 5th, 1824 in Ohio. He learned to become a barber. And afterwards, after becoming a barber, around the age of 16, he wanted to tour the South. So he boards his steamship and he's touring the South, and he's seeing all these injustices that were done during slavery. He's seeing how the slaves were treated, how they were, how they weren't even being treated as human. And this stirred something in him. And he wanted to become an abolitionist, and he wanted to put an end to slavery. He wanted to stop the suffering of his people. So later on, August 12th, 1846, he meets with 12 other men in St. Louis, and they form a secret organization for the purpose of ending slavery in the United States. They were not trying to end it by diplomatic ways. They were wanting to go to war and end slavery on the battlefield. So this organization became known as the Knights of Liberty, and they had a warlike mentality. They would want to stamp out and destroy slavery for all time. I'm gonna get into this more later, but Reverend Moses, he was also a member of Prince Hall Lodge No. 1 in St. Louis. He was elected to serve as Grand Master in 1871. Around 1866, he joins the AME Church, and I believe he was ordained as a minister in 1867. The Knights of Liberty, the Knights of Tabor, these names are all going to be kind of interchangeable, but there was actually 3 separate organizations that I'm going to touch on. And this here, it kind of goes into why they chose the name Tabor. And you see towards the middle, it says, "Our cause was just, and we believe in the justice of God of Israel and the rights of man. Under the name of Tabor, we resolved to make full preparation to strike the blow for liberty." They were not playing. They want to go to war, and they want to end slavery. During the time, there was an oath, which it's going to be on the next page, where part of the oath is that they cannot reveal any person's name. And this was during slavery. And during slavery, they organized they gathered this organization, and they amassed a number of over 47,000 members. That's 47,000 members across the South during slavery. And their whole purpose was to stamp out slavery. So this is an amazing testament of what Reverend Moses Dixon was able to do with this organization, and gather these men from all over the South who had the same mindset of liberating their people from slavery. When the organization was formed, they elected Moses Dixon to be the chief of it, and his job was to lead them into battle. It says the men that were selected to become members of the Knights of Liberty, they had to be courageous, patient, temperate, and had common sense, which is a key thing. I know people say all the time about these organizations should have a literacy test. Well, this was definitely one of them. You cannot be pardon my French, but you couldn't be a stupid person and be a member of Knights of Liberty, because their whole mission could get compromised if you didn't have common sense to keep the secrets to yourself. And they had a very powerful oath, which they stated was never broken. And part of it says, I can die, but I cannot reveal the name of any member until the slaves are free. So they all had their secret passes and stuff, so that way they can know each other, same way as kind of does in different other various other fraternal organizations. But this oath was very powerful, and their key was you had to have common sense. So the next organization was the first. It was called the Order of 12 of Knights of Tabor. This was organized in Galena, Illinois in August 1855. The secret work of the Knights of Liberty was not imparted to the society. It was called the Order of 12 to honor the 12 men that started the Knights of Liberty. But even though it was named in honor of them, none of their works was included into the organization of the original Knights of Tabor. So in 1859, Moses Dixon moved his headquarters of this new organization to St. Louis. That way he could be near the Knights of Liberty and help guide both organizations simultaneously. But this organization also disbanded in 1959 as well. Then the Knights of Liberty became extinct after the Civil War. There was really no need for them anymore. A lot of their members, the Knights of Liberty, joined the Union Army to help fight in the Civil War. Civil War ends, slavery ends. They really didn't have a purpose anymore. And according to Moses Dixon, he was the only person from the Knights of Liberty to return from the battlefield. So in 1868, Brother Dixon decides that he needs to start another organization. Whereas the Knights of Liberty was more warlike, he wanted to create a beneficial order, something that could benefit his members could benefit from. And they want to continue to perpetuate the memory of the 12 men that started the Knights of Liberty. He never wanted to forget the original purpose was to free his people from slavery. So he starts this new organization in 1872. The National Grand Temple and Tabernacle of the Order of 12 of Knights and Daughters of Tabor was formed. They encouraged Christianity, education, morality, and temperance. It was also recommended that the members purchase homes and acquire wealth. They did not want you to be poor. They want you to strive. They increase the network to help you purchase a house, gain wealth, gain land. They want their members to be prosperous. And that's what was the driving force behind a lot of these fraternal orders. They all preach that they want you to become homeowners. They want you to have property. They want you to have something. They want you to be a member of an organization. They want you to be a contributing member of a contributing member of society. This is something to bring home with the Tabor buildings. If you ever been to Atlanta, and for the members that are from Atlanta, right next door to this, to the right, is 330 Auburn Avenue, which is our old Grand East, or where the Atlanta Lodges meet. So you probably looked at this building a million times. You probably never noticed it, but this was the Tabor building. As you can see around the top, and the blue arrow points to the cornerstone, and it was laid by Dr. Edwin J. Turner, who was the chief grand mentor of the Knights and Daughters of Tabor, and he was also a member of Mount Pisgah Lodge number 53, which just so happens to be the #1 lodge in the state of Georgia. I'm gonna stick with that story from now on.
You know what's funny about that? Corinthian 18 is like the #1 lodge in DC, I think, and I think St. Mark's #7 is the #1 in Ohio.
It's amazing how this stuff works out.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But the International Order of 12 Knights and Daughters of Tabor, they got very large. They had some of the most prominent members, and a lot of the people that were members of this order were also a member of Prince Hall Lodges and members of the Order of Star and Harris Jericho, such as Miss Mary Elizabeth Dixon, who was Reverend Dixon's wife. She was born, I guess I had a typo on this, but she was born in 1818 in St. Genevieve, Missouri. In 1882, the Knights and Daughters of Tabor elected her to the office of Mother of all Knights and Daughters of Tabor for life. They realized that she was very instrumental in the start of this organization. She gave a lot to it. She gave her heart and soul. So they elected her as Mother of all Knights. She was a charter member of St. Mary's Court, Harris of Jericho, located in St. Louis, Missouri in 1865. According to Moses Dixon, this was the first HOJ court established in the United States. She served as a most ancient matron, and she served as grand most ancient matron. She was also a member of R.H. Gleaves Tabernacle of Brother and Sisters of Love and Charity. So I see there's like numerous fraternal organizations that we could probably talk about this for probably the next 10 years. All right, this is examples of some of the badges. On the left, you have the badge of Knights of Tabor, which was the male side. Then you had the Tabernacle the Daughters of the Tabernacle, which was obviously the female side, and you have their badge on the right. You can Google the manual for the Knights and Daughters of Tabor, and it's going to go through all their ritualistic stuff. Their symbolism is so deep. This is probably one of my favorite fraternal organizations of all time. Everything they did had a meaning. Every letter, every number, everything meant something. So out of all the organizations, this is my absolute favorite. All right, to move on to another fraternal organization, which was the Knights of Wise Men. It was started 1879 by a man named John Lewis Brown, who was born in 1839 in Nashville, Tennessee. This was another fraternal organization that had fraternal insurance and a burial benefit society. It had a 3-degree system. For those that didn't know, John Lewis Brown is also the great-great-grandfather of Brother Lionel Richie. And I believe Brother Lionel Richie did talk about Brother Brown on a TV show. This book is called Some Efforts of American Negroes for their own social betterment. It talks about fraternal organizations around the country. And this was a study done in May 1898. And it talks about the numbers, the membership numbers, how much money they had, what they were doing. So just give you kind of over idea of what these fraternal organizations were doing in the country. On the right, you see an excerpt of a paper that was submitted by Dr. Henry Rutherford Butler, who was served as past Grand Master of Georgia. So, for example, he talks about the Oddfellows. It said there are 5 lodges of Oddfellows in the city with a total membership of 612. The monthly assessment is 50 cents, and the annual income is about $3,772 a year. This is spent largely in sick and death benefits. One of the lodges owns a building lot on which it intends to erect a hall, and a general order is to build a widows and orphans home in the near future. So he goes to the Knights of Pythias and the Good Samaritans and the Daughters of Bethel and a couple other different organizations. But this book, this is something that you can Google as well. It will give you an idea of what fraternal organizations were doing across the country. And as far as local organizations go, in Columbus, there still is one called the International Benevolent Society. This was started early 1900s. It went through a period of reorganization where it was rebuilt by a brother named Dr. Richard Henry Cobb, who served as our District Deputy Grand Master, and who was a member of my lodge, ironically, which happened to be the best lodge in the state of Georgia. So fast forward, so the International Benevolent Society, they provided burial benefits, and they also had a funeral home attached to them. After he died, his nephew took over, After his nephew died, a man named Dr. Kidd Terry took over the organization. Dr. Kidd Terry didn't want to deal with the funeral home portion anymore. He doesn't want to deal with the benevolent side. So benevolent side of it. So he reached out to a man named Charles Huff, sold the funeral home to him. Charles Huff kept the International Funeral Home name and just put his name in the front, and it's called now Charles E. Huff International Funeral Home. This is the same funeral home that is still active today. So, and it's being ran by Charles E. Huff Jr. And the International Benevolent Society is still a functioning society in Columbus. So some of these organizations, as Brother Morgan stated, some of them are defunct and some of them are still existing. So if you want to become a part of one of these organizations to help them continue to build and grow and share a legacy, feel free to reach out to them. And Brother Caffey, that's all I have.
Thank you, good brother. Excellent presentation. Thank you for that great information. Brother Morgan, we have some questions, sir, from our great audience tonight.
Yes, we actually do. I saw a really good one. Let me scroll back up here for a second. Oh yeah, here it is. All right. So CJ Raymond asked. He said he wonders if other Black fraternal organizations have been plagued with clandestine groups similar to what we see in Black Freemasonry. And actually, I want to answer that for him with a funny tidbit that I found actually in the history of my Grand Lodge. Back in that era, and we were talking the late 1860s, really like the early 1870s. My Grand Lodge was petitioned to, and by my Grand Lodge I mean here, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC. We were petitioned to do a cornerstone ceremony for, I believe it was like the Order of Galilean Fishermen, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, for a new building that they were establishing, right? And so we said, yeah, sure, no problem. And this was a period where, we were doing a lot of cornerstone ceremonies in our history back at that time, way more than we've done, I think, recently, because DC politics of building is way different now. But anyway, so we said, yeah, sure, no problem. Then you check a few meetings later. Now, mind you, my Grand Lodge in DC, we used to meet every couple weeks. We were having a special Grand Lodge meeting back then. What happened was they came back and said, hey, we said we were going to do it, but we've been made aware that this lodge of fishermen is a clandestine lodge. It's not an official. They don't have proper authorization or whatever. And it was located in Georgetown. Now, here's the interesting tidbit about that. At that time, if anyone's familiar with the name Thornton A. Jackson, who I'm sure you've heard us talk about a number of times here on this show, Thornton Jackson had a petition to join the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC in 1865, again in 66, and again in 1867, and he was not allowed in 3 times consecutively. Well, that following year, he decided about 1868, he decided to go over to Maryland to join the Independent Grand Lodge of Maryland. Now, mind you, in the 1860s, DC, we were under the National Grand Lodge. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then we need you to go back and check the 2 episodes we did where we talked about the National Grand Lodge and all those politics. But in any case, we were under the National Grand Lodge. He went to the Independent Grand Lodge of Maryland, joined them, and then became a district deputy Grand Master over Maryland's 2 lodges that they had placed in DC, which today are known as Warren Lodge number 8 and Pythagoras Lodge number 9. If you notice, Pythagoras 9 is the same lodge that Frank Coleman from Omega Psi Phi was a member of, right? So we see how this all comes full circle. This clandestine fisherman's lodge may very well, and I think probably was, connected to the establishment of those 2 Masonic lodges, which eventually got incorporated into the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC. So that's just one example of these type of things. But I know I'm going to be quiet and let the other brothers speak. But I'm aware of a number of other types of, I mean, we have them in Masonry, but other organizations have them as well. We have internal splits, scam artists. I mean, you name them, other organizations, you will find them if you look in their history. Brothers have anything else to add on to that?
I think you hit it on the head. I mean, anytime you have people involved in anything, especially if, unfortunately, some people think they can make a quick buck off of something, I think you there is research and different things out there that shows a lot of these organizations, existed in regards to, clandestine, what we term clandestine organizations, because you just have just differences of opinion as well, especially when a leader dies, and then there's this split or a power vacuum within some of these organizations, and some folks go on. But I guess, we just need to be careful with using, I guess, Masonic terminology when we're talking about some of these organizations too, because within Freemasonry, when we talk about, clandestine organizations, different things like that, that takes you into the how the organization is governed, how it's formed, and different things. And all of these organizations that we've talked about, or that, we may one day talk about, all these other organizations, they may not use that same type of formation, or you may not need the same type of credentials in order to be considered legitimate, I guess, for lack of a better word. So, we just need to understand what exactly are we talking about when it comes to those things.
Absolutely. But Gillarm, did you have anything to add on to that?
No, I didn't. I think you two brothers hit the nail on the head. So yeah, I'm having to add.
Not a problem. We had a couple other questions I saw here. This is actually, I think, a unique one. This is aimed at you, Dave. We have Sean Daniels wants to know who did your shirt. So people want they want some fashion advice from the man himself.
Haberdashery.
Right. What's crazy is I actually got this shirt a couple years ago, probably about 10 years ago, at a shrine convention here in Columbus. But this shirt can be made by Worship Master Turner of Lewis Hayden Lodge number 6. So you hit me in my inbox. I'll pass you his contact information. This goes for anybody. I'm putting it out there. He's from Columbus. He's from the second best lodge in Columbus, but I can't hold that against him. But yeah, he would do you a shirt like this, have all the emblems, and if you've I'm gonna get another one done that has the past emblems for all the York Right houses. But yeah, Worship Master Turner of Lewis Hayden Lodge number 6 can do this for you. Yeah, he does excellent work.
Wonderful. We got another question in from let's see, Vernon Funderburk. Vernon Funderburk asks, he basically said we need to push for more about financial stability and home ownership within our organizations, and in Vernon's opinion, we aren't doing that today, and Vernon would like to know why that is. I think that's an excellent question. I think that one of the things that has happened in the African American community over the past 100 years is that our quote unquote the struggle quote unquote has morphed from a civil rights situation to consumer rights, right? So if you go back and you study some of these organizations that we're talking about, they were buying up land, they were buying up farmland and apartments and houses and churches, etc. And what has happened over time is that the way, I'm not going to say the civil rights movement itself, but the way that a lot of people are taught about the civil rights movement, people pushed integration so much on people. I think that now we have this idea that we have to move and live among a diverse population, which is nothing inherently wrong with that. But when you don't value what you have already, then, or where you live or the people that you're around, and you don't say, hey, let me take these 2 bricks that I have here right in front of me and build something. Some people today would rather, instead of building something themselves, they'd rather buy something someone else built. And, I think that we have to kind of tap back into our history, which one of the reasons why I think that we did this show is because, to put it simply, we just simply don't seem to recognize the legacy from which a lot of us stem from, which is one of the reasons why this show exists, why this episode is here today, to try to remind us of things that, we were kind of made to forget through a number of different ways. I don't want to go too deep into that on this form here, but I think that that's ultimately what it is, just a lack of knowledge of what our forefathers and foremothers really were fighting for. And so when you go back and you look at the Knights of Tabor, which, by the way, Brother Gillum, I think that was an excellent presentation. When you go back and you look at Omega Psi Phi and the Greek fraternity tradition or other organizations, you see predominantly African Americans starting something from nothing and building something. I think, and not worrying about what profession they were in. I think Brother Caffey highlighted that quite brilliantly with Omega Psi Phi. And by the way, I must thank you because you taught me a thing or two about my own alma mater, right? About Howard. So, yeah.
Well, to add on to that, just go back a couple of years ago, I visited Sunset Lodge number 76 in El Paso, Texas. And the worship master at the time, the worship master prior to the West Lodge number 53, which also located in El Paso, came to do a masturbation study hall. And most time we come to masturbation study halls, we think about doing something ritualistic or talking about something ritualistic. Well, that's not what he did. He talked about finances and retirement to help educate the brothers on how to get more for their money. And if we were to incorporate stuff like that into our lodges, where we talk about how to buy homes, how to save our money, how to prep for retirement, how to buy land, we could achieve some of the things that our forefathers did, but it has to start with us. And we got some brilliant minds in our lodges. We got some of the smartest brothers that I think I've ever seen in my life. And now it's time to put those brothers to work. You got a brother that works in finance, or that's his background. Give him a few minutes to speak on saving or buying land or something, and that's going to help all of us become better. But for some reason, that's just not happening now. We spend our time in our lodges talking about the next fish fry and how much money we don't have. Yeah. But I'm not going to go down that path.
Oh, by the way, speaking of which, I got some tickets here for you. Oh,
right.
Yeah, we got to start spending our time more productively in our meetings, and people want to get educated, and this is something that would be great to talk about how to purchase a home. So that's all I got.
All right, Brother Caffey.
No, I can't. I will say one thing. Those brothers and sisters back then that created these organizations and then also contributed to a lot of folks buying land and being productive. They saw the need that existed during that time, and then did something and created organizations to address it. So I think sometimes we need to understand that, instead of looking at what they did, look at the process. Like, okay, what is it that we need right now? Like, do we need to do exactly the same thing they did and push those type of things? Or is it a different need now? And do we need to press that and pursue that? So I'm not saying that, home ownership and owning different things isn't a need. I think it is. But I think if we really want to be strategic about it, we need to really understand what the need is today, because the need today may be different than it was back then. And the most important thing is addressing the need, So, and one thing that I totally agree with what Brother Dillon said, as far as the answer to and the plan that's needed to address those things. We don't need to go out and hire this this consulting firm. We don't need to get this person. We have people in our organizations today that could help us do that.
That's right.
So, we really need to. One thing that my Grand Master told me, and I just, for whatever reason, found it profound. He said that, organizations need to start asking people what they're interested in and not necessarily what they do for a living. Yeah. Because what you do for a living, you do that to pay the bills, and you may even like it, but what you like doing is what you're probably passionate about. And that's the type of skills and the skill set we need to address some of these issues. So
absolutely. And Brother Caffey, don't go too far away, because we got a question here that I think is really tailor-made for you. We had somebody here I think this is Tony. I think that's Tony James.
Oh, creator of the name.
Right. He's the other important James in Prince Hall Freemasonry today. The other one. He wants to know, do you think that the rise in membership and I guess the existence of BGLOs has contributed to the decline in our Masonic population?
No.
Okay.
No, because I think it pulls from two different areas. It's sometimes those areas are similar in regards to, you know, Black Greek letter organizations pull from those folks that either in college, matriculated through college, or some type of college education, whereas Freemasonry pulls from all walks of life. You know, it's one of our things that we stand on, you know. So I don't think that's contributed to it. I think that, you know, again, going back to what you two brothers said earlier, the people want more than what the lodge is giving them, you know. So you'll have a class of, you know, 5 or 6 brothers that come into the lodge, and then, you know, a year or two later, you may have 1 or 2 brothers that are still active, you know. So I think Prince Hall right now, Prince Hall Freemasonry in general, and Prince Hall Freemasonry in particular, is really trying to it's just this internal battle right now, you know. We have these people that are coming on, and one of the reasons why we do this show is to address that need. You know, you have brothers that are coming in that they don't want to sit through a 2-3 hour meeting just hearing about reports, fish fries, balls, or anything like that. They want Masonry. People join Masonry for one simple reason: Masonry. Right. You know, I've yet to meet anyone that joined the fraternity, Free and Accepted Masons, because they wanted to hone their skills or better their skills at conducting fish fries. You know, if no one pointed out to me, but I haven't met that person yet.
But that's what Ken said. No, let me stop.
So, but I don't think, you know, because and also too, and don't, you know, one thing that I didn't necessarily laugh at. I just said, when I became a member of Omega Psi Phi, I've just found it interesting, and I've had this conversation with other people that belong to other Black Greek letter organizations. The same issues and problems that we are experiencing in Prince Hall Freemasonry are some of the same issues that exist and we're facing in our respective Black Greek letter organizations too. You know, so one's not, you know, doing anything different than the other. It's just, yeah.
Well, Brother Caffey, I'll defer to you on that, since you're actually a member of one. I'm not. But one thing I will say, I have observed in my time in Masonry and whatnot, and my interactions with some, you know, Greek fraternity members, I think, is that I do think that there's been an effect on Freemasonry, in that I think that what happens is the Greek organizations they end up getting people a lot younger than a lot of lodges do. And those people spend, you know, the prime of their organizational, you know, life, if you will, contributing financially and otherwise to those organizations. And so if they do decide to join a Masonic Lodge or Eastern Star chapter, something like that, I've noticed a lot of times it tends to be a little bit later in life, or even if it's not, they're kind of pulled in different directions for their resources, their time. Then they have family obligations and work and stuff. So I do think I don't think that it contributes to a decline in membership per se, as you said, but I do think it contributes to a possible decline in activity. And on the flip side, I will say this: I know a number of people who were in Greek organizations or other similar groups first, and then they join Masonry, and they're like, "Oh, this is what I want. This is where I'm at," and so they end up kind of dying down on the other stuff that they're into. So
yeah, I mean, because it's like when you come through. When I was, you know, fortunate to come into the craft at an early age. I was 24 when I came in. I'll be 47 in January. You know, so I spent a great, you know, amount of years in the craft. One thing, like when you come into Freemasonry, you know, that's it. You know, you're in a lodge unless you move and you demit and you go to the lodge. You come in as an undergrad into a Black letter organization. After you graduate, you usually or should go on to a graduate chapter, where it's more serious. You know, they definitely take the community service more seriously, and the organization and supporting the organization. That's where in some of our Black Greek-led organizations where you see the drop off, you know, as far as brothers coming in as undergrads and then not continuing on financially as members of their graduate chapter. So, you know, it's one of those things where you'll have a lot of bros in the city, but how many of them do you have that's actually financial on the roads and contributing, you know, financially? So, you know, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. We got a couple more questions that I think we have time to take, and then we'll probably, I guess, wrap it up for the evening. I saw somebody asked, Brother Gillarm, we have Sister Christine Hackett from out in California. She asked, what was the name of the funeral home and benevolent society that was started by W.E. Terry?
Oh, actually, it wasn't William Terry. I think I put it just in the chat, but it was his son, Dr. Kid Terry.
Okay.
And he didn't necessarily start it. He later became president. When he took over, it was the International Benevolent Society, and they also had the International Funeral Home. He then sold the funeral home to Charles E. Huff, and Charles Huff made it his own. And now then Kid Terry became his son's godfather.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And even though you put it in the chat, we know still think it's good that we have it on the recording, because you know, other people may have the same question, you know. So,
right.
so yeah. We got another one, and actually, I want to speak on this a little bit too. E-Read Sports TV asked, how do we feel about individuals saying that Masonry is the foundation of the D9, and by D9 I believe they mean Divine Nine frats and sororities. And I know, Brother Caffey, I know you're waiting to jump on that.
Go ahead, bro.
Let me just slide one in real quick.
Yeah,
you know, one thing I hope that folks get from this particular episode, and I did see somebody asked earlier about us maybe doing a part 2 follow-up at some point on this topic, which I think is worth discussing, brothers. One thing I hope that people get an understanding of is that there really is a historical lineage from Prince Hall Freemasonry, which was, you know, the first African American fraternal organization, but that there were others that came down the line before you get to the early 1900s. I mean, heck, you could do a whole episode just talking about Black Greek fraternities and sororities and whatnot that existed prior to the night, you know, the Divine Nine. Well, prior to 1906, you know, you had other ones that died out that a lot of folks don't know about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could do a whole discussion on that. But I think that for me, Masonry played a role in that historical lineage. Whether or not it has anything to do with the ritual and whatnot, I'm not a member, and if I was, I probably wouldn't say anything about it. But I do think that you can find a historical lineage, and of course, we see, as Brother Caffey pointed out earlier, that you know, that you had members of these organizations that were members of Masonic lodges. But here's the question: we don't know. Were they also members of the Elks? Were the Elks the followers or the mothers of, or the foundation of, or the? I mean, you know, yes, I think. Yes, but then there's also a no as well. It's a little bit both end. You have to give them the respect of who they are, but then you recognize that there's a historical legacy. You know, when Brother Caffey talked about, and I get this. Look, I'm gonna say it today on camera, but I know somebody's gonna ask it, because every couple months I get somebody in my inbox somewhere asking me about Bishop Love being a member of my lodge. Right? Let's be clear. Omega Psi Phi was established, I believe you said November 17th of 1911, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so good. I'm happy I got that right. so they were established in 1911. My lodge, Corinthian 18, we were actually established originally in 1912 as a clandestine lodge under John G. Jones. And then we were healed in the Prince Hall Masonry. The healing took place in 1915, and our lodge was chartered in 1916. So, yeah, Masonry existed prior to Omega Psi Phi, but as far as I know, as the associate historian for DC, as far as I can tell, Bishop Love himself may have only been a clandestine Mason by 1912. I can document him in 1916 in Prince Hall Masonry. So, am I making sense? I hope I'm making sense to everybody. What I'm saying is that you know, when you look at things as like a straight shot in history, it's not always that. It's a little bit of both, and you know, so I hope that made sense to everybody. Brother Caffey?
No, bro. I mean, it's and we used to get it, I think, more on a regular basis, and I think it's died down now. But you can always set your calendar or your clock to 3 different things as far as discussions. Prince Hall Freemasonry being the father of all, Martin Luther King being a Freemason, and Prince Hall being on the back of the $2 bill. Like that, those were always like the 3 questions that people would want to raise or know about because of various reasons. When it comes to this particular subject, I'm always big on what's your definition of foundation. Like, define that. Like, what do you mean? Because, you know, if you're saying that, you know, all the founders took, you know, our rituals and included it into the formation of all of our, you know, fraternities and sororities, well, you can probably pick that apart, and from a historical and looking at certain dates, it just wouldn't be possible. So I agree with what Brother Morgan said, looking at it from a standpoint of a proud heritage. You know, we share a heritage that may have been, you know, started by what we call Prince Hall Freemasonry, and parts of that heritage that can either be this even transcends the conversation that we have. It comes up sometimes even about, you know, Egypt being the foundation of Freemasonry and everything like that. It's you can talk about that, just the heritage and how man has always wanted to have some type of organization where they had a certain membership that was only open to a certain select individuals. That organization had, in order to become a member, you had to go through some type of ritualistic initiation process, and then from there the organization served the greater community. You know, so if you talk about those broad terms, you can apply. I did a research project almost 20 years ago with a young man that I used to work with when I was used to work at a children's home for kids that had issues, and he was in the gang. He was in Cincinnati. He was a Blood, and we just got to talking. And I asked him about his experience coming into coming into his gang. So he was telling me everything that he had to do, and I started laughing. And I said, wow, some of this stuff is similar to some of the stuff, you know, that people have to do to either become Masons or to join, Black Greek letter organizations from an initiation standpoint. The crime aside, but I'm just talking about, he was really.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Right. Just the symbols, the knowledge that he had to the knowledge of the organization that he had to memorize and commit to memory and then repeat back, you know, verbatim to, you know, it was just similar. So, you know, can you find similarities? Yeah, but, you know, as Brother Morgan said, I can only have that conversation with really members or men that are members of both organizations. Couldn't have them with you because, you know, I would be doing a disservice or violating an obligation that I took. But yeah, that's it.
Okay. Wonderful. As we get ready to land this plane, I see somebody, I don't remember who it was, but somebody asked about what book projects that everyone was working on. They wanted updates on what everybody's got going on this year. Dave, I don't know if you're able to discuss anything at the moment or not.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest one, we got several that we're working on besides between me and Dr. Ken Collins, Eric Coney, Marla Honeywell, Patrick Wells, and a bunch of other people. We got a whole several project that we're working on together. But as far as solo, I'm leaving the group with going solo with a project. It's the history of the Prince Hall Grandma of Georgia. Right now, I am anticipating it to be ready for publication before our next grand session in June. I have a couple things to do beforehand, but that one I looked at. Let's take the advice of past Grandmaster Willie Williams and Joe Snow, and it wasn't Joe Snow in recent times. It's something he said previously. But he said that history book should be released in 2 volumes, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. The first volume is going to be up until John Wesley Dobbs' tenure, from the origin of Prince Hall Masonry in the state of Georgia to the end of John Wesley Dobbs' tenure. Then volume 2 is going to be started X.L. Neal up into Bruce James, and I'm probably going to add an additional portion. Since it will be after grand session for that second portion, the additional chapter is going to be on our next Grandmaster.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I was restraining myself when you said you were doing something solo, because I started to say, "Ain't nobody come to see you, Otis."
I'm on the ground over here.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I'm actually proud to announce, formally, for the first time here on the Think Tank, that I actually have published. I've completed my book project, which is entitled "The Lost Empire: Black Freemasonry in the Old West," from 1867 to 1906. I've sent it off to the printer. I'm waiting on an author's proof to come back this week. Within the next 2, hopefully not 3 weeks, but definitely before Christmas hits, I will be releasing my first solo book project, and I want to thank everybody for your time and patience in that regard. So I hope you guys pick it up and enjoy it. And I've worked very hard on this, 4 years worth of research, and I'm just happy and thankful for all the Prince Hall Think Tank fans out there. I will let you all know the pricing and information and whatnot. You'll be able to get it online and all that good stuff. So just bear with me. Just keep breathing another week or two, and keep your ears to the ground, and you'll be hearing some more details about that very, very shortly. And with that, I think that's going to be it, brother. So I guess we can move into closing statements, Brother Caffey. It's on you.
All right, Brother Gillarm, any closing and parting shots, sir?
Always. I definitely want to just thank everybody for your support. Definitely thank you for your support tonight for the New York Knicks. We beat the Memphis Grizzlies. One thing I do, because I have a horrible memory, but I don't want to forget. We talk about education in our lodges. If you see on my Facebook page, we're gonna have our grand director. My lodge is bringing our grand director of Masonic Education, works with Doug Evans, who was my mentor and helped me become a grand historian. He's gonna come and give a lecture to my lodge at on tomorrow evening on the sacred science and geometry. I believe because of the magnitude of the brothers that's going to be in attendance, we'll probably have to move the meeting to the historic Haley Thomas Auditorium, which is located downstairs in our building. So the brothers that can be in attendance, I'm also going to briefly mention about Dr. King speaking there, where he spoke at, the podium, the mic stand, they're still there, all that good stuff. So if you can come, definitely the gavel's gonna sound promptly at 7:30. If you know our worship master, he's not gonna wait around too long. As soon as the clock hits 7:30, he's sounding it, and we're gonna fellowship afterwards. So it's gonna be a great experience. Another brother, I'm putting him on the spot, not only because he is a Nick hater, just like some everybody else, but a good friend, brother, worship master Reese Bird out of Germany. His lodge is putting together a town hall and study session, and they have some great things planned for their lodge education program. So if you're looking for a template or getting some ideas, that's a good brother to reach out to. Brother Bird is always active, on Facebook and different groups. He's always, he's definitely very accessible. So if you're looking for education and trying to get something started in your lodge, he's a great asset. I feel like he's a great asset. So we have to get back to providing education in our lodges and not talking about the latest fish fry, or not even talking about how, not mentioning James Morgan. If we could go to a whole lodge meeting and not mention James Morgan once, it'll be awesome. So maybe that's a goal.
I agree.
So, and also bringing some fun and laughter back to our lodges. You want to have education, but you want to go back to your lodge and have a good time. You don't want to sit in your lodge and be sad the whole time. So I guess for the new year, try to bring some fun and education to your lodges. That's all I really have for right now. I'll be looking forward to you. Oh, I'm gonna, if you're in the Columbus area, I will be putting out some information about doing a tour of a slave quarters that's still standing in the city. So I'm working with the city on scheduling a tour of that building, and I'll be putting that out on my page. So, or you can reach out to me through inbox or whatever. But that's all I have, and I'll see you all next time. And still, go Knicks.
Thank you.
There you go,
Brother Morgan.
Oh man, well again, thank everybody for joining us this evening. I appreciate all the positive feedback in the chat regarding my forthcoming book. So like I said, you guys will get more details on that. I did want to let everybody know, and actually I think I told you brothers, I was actually, my picture actually appeared in the newspaper in the Alexandria Gazette. So if you go online, you can check it out. You can get the online edition. I believe it's a weekly newspaper. You can get this past week's edition, and you can get it there. What happened was that I visited Universal Lodge number 1 in Alexandria, Virginia. That's not why I was in the paper. Universal number 1 used to be Universal number 2 under DC, and prior to that they were number 10 under the Hiram Grand Lodge in Pennsylvania. But anyway, for the first time in history, a Prince Hall Lodge was authorized to have a meeting and program at the George Washington Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia. If you've never been, just Google it. It's a really huge Masonic temple and museum. If you haven't been, if you end up in this area, and you owe it to yourself to check it out. If you're a Mason or not, it's a great place to go and learn about Freemasonry. And this was the first time in history that Prince Hall Lodge actually had a tiled meeting and whatnot there. Lodges from around the world have used it for various conferences. Recently, the Quattro Coronati Lodge of Research from England had a conference there. So I think that was excellent. And for me, I'll tell you, one of the most touching things for me as a 29-year-old African American Freemason was being there and seeing elders. One of our previous guests, Brother Tahuti Evans, who's a Virginia native himself, talked about how he remembered when he was young. If you've ever been to that museum or to the temple, you know it's on a really tall, high hill. I heard some elders there during the meeting talk about when they were children, how that was the one hill you wanted to sled down when it snowed. You know, that you knew you could get some speed on that hill, and how when they were children, they were not allowed to sled there as Black children. And for them to be welcomed, or for us to be welcomed as honored guests, to have the food laid out and everything, you know, it shows how much times have changed. And it really brought a tear, you know, to everyone's eye to hear Brother Evans and other elder brothers and past masters talk about that. It was very humbling and auspicious occasion. So if you get a chance, please check out the Alexandria Gazette and check that issue. Again, it's from this past week's issue, page 8, I believe it is, and you'll see a couple pictures in there and whatnot. So definitely check that out. Other than that, I have nothing else to say. Hope everybody has a safe and productive holiday season, which hopefully includes buying, you know, The Lost Empire. You know, did you see the little the thing on my
plug?
Right. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, brothers. Oh, I just want to make sure. Can y'all hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, usually Brother Collins at this time, he would play the fight song of Alabama. Since he's not here, I'm going to play the fight song to my alma mater, The Ohio State University. If you didn't know, if you didn't watch yesterday's game, we crushed Michigan pretty bad. So I just wanted to get into the mood. We will make the playoffs, and we probably will play Alabama, and we will beat Alabama again. So, Brother Collins, hopefully when you review this this episode, that can inspire you. All right. So that being said, thank you, brothers, again for a great show. You know, as I stated earlier, there's so many fraternal bodies out there, and unfortunately, we couldn't cover them all tonight. I actually do like the idea of doing a part 2 to this show. We got a lot of great instant feedback from that, so I thank you all for that. You know, one of the things that connects us all of these organizations is the struggle. You know, many of them were birthed during a time period where the fight for basic human rights for blacks were being fought for. And it was through this struggle, through this pain, and through this misery that some of these groups were formed. So for many of them to not only still be around today, but to have grown and given light and hope to the communities that they serve is truly a testament of the men and the women that created these groups. Also, one thing that I've noticed and I'm very, very happy and proud of is the fact that during our shows now, you know, we don't just have people in the chat room just, you know, asking questions and just saying hello. We have a lot of great information being shared in our chat room. So thank you for that. I hope that continues. And that's basically what we want. You know, we want that sharing of information, and hopefully out of those great conversations that's taking place, that, you know, we can get more shows like the Prince Hall Think Tank, you know, on air. So thank you for that. Thanks for joining us tonight. We hope you've gained a little insight, and we hope you join us for future broadcasts of the Prince Hall Think Tank. Have a good evening, and remember, let's teach masonry in our lodges. Again, good evening.
Good night, everybody.